everyone. I'm about to introduce to you author Christina Kovac, and we're going to be talking about her brand new book, The Cutaway. And I am so excited to talk to her. First of all, because this book takes place in Washington, D.C. And I lived in Washington for almost 4 years back in the early 90s. And I can't wait to talk to her about that because there's so much about D.C. in here. But let me just show you guys something. She didn't send me just one book to give away or 2 books, but she sent me 3 books to give out in my giveaway. So I'm so excited about this. We're going to be giving them away this week, and thank you, Christina. I really appreciate it. And anyway, here, guys, is Christina. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking with author Christina Kovac, and this is her debut novel. And look, I have the paperbacks, and I have 3 of them, which I'm going to be giving away this week, and I'm so excited about that. Thank you so much, Christina.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, when I got these in the mail, I was like, wow, everybody is going to love you because I get to give these away, which makes me so happy. But I am so happy I found you. I love debut novels. Love them, okay? They're like my favorite because it's like it's like your first dive into the writing world. And when they're so good like this one, I'm like, yay! And I like root for you, and it's just so exciting.
Thanks. It's been a crazy year. I mean, we debuted last March, and I feel like I've been a writer forever. These past, I don't know, it's almost a year, but I feel like in some ways it was just yesterday, and then in other ways I'm like, oh my God, I feel so old.
Yeah, because this did come out last March, but I'm telling you, because the paperback coming out, I mean, it kind of gets a resurgence, which is really fun too, because as soon as somebody gets a hold of it and then they kind of bring it back and everybody's like, oh my God, I missed it. I want it, because there's so many books. And even as I read about a book a day, and I will find a book and I'm like, how did I miss that? How did I miss the debut of that book? How did I miss the release date? But even with social media and even with Amazon and, we still miss books. It still happens. So,
it's amazing. I mean, so it's very hard for debut novelists to even get noticed. Every single year, 42 to 44,000 books are published. I mean, that's what a publisher told me when we were interviewing one of the publishers I was going to go with. And she told me, she said, look, debut novelists, they're really uphill. You have to think about not just what your first book, but what you're going to do with your second book and your third. You're building a readership. So it's really exciting, that first step.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. And this one guy, I'd found him on Twitter, one author, right? And I said to him, I'm so happy I found you. And he's like, well, to be honest, this book was really popular. This is great. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't find everybody. So it's always a compliment. I mean, if I find, if one person can find people, like, that's a compliment, I think. So
listen, all you want when you're writing, when you first start writing and you're home alone in a dark room thinking, this is never going to get published, all you hope for is just a few readers. I mean, and to be able to actually, the really neat thing is like, talking to people who've read your work. Actually communicate, hey, they took in my story, they liked it or they didn't like it, or they got what they wanted out of it or didn't get what they wanted out, but now we're communicating. I mean, it's just so exciting. It's so, you feel really blessed.
Yeah, and I was so excited when I started reading and I realized this was set in DC. And I was like, because I spent like 4 years, I worked for a law firm at 20th and Pennsylvania. So that was like really downtown. Okay. I got a little bit outside. This is a little bit more towards Georgetown. And I ventured a little bit over there. But in my 4 years working like downtown, even that area has changed so much. Because as much as I can come down there, I go down. But you can't get close to it anymore like you used to be able to. When I worked there in the early 90s, I used to walk past the White House every single day, for lunch, and I always thought that was the coolest thing ever. Or driving in past the Capitol, I used to think, oh, It's so beautiful. I get to work in DC. This is so awesome. I loved it. But I love your reference in the beginning when you were talking about how conservative. And you were talking about, I think she was like dressing or talking about somebody's dress. And you were talking about like the black and the suits and everything is very proper. Well, I came from California. I'd been working in California. I get a job, and first day of work, I show up in this like teal pantsuit, which I thought was cool. Okay, shoulder pads, because this is the early 90s. I had shoulder pads, and it was my prettiest outfit. And I got pulled right into HR, and they're like, you can't wear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the federal kind of area downtown, the world of law firms and government and all that. It's very traditional. It holds on to its traditions. It's this is where rule of law, government. These are where the founders lived. I mean, this is history. And then you step 10 blocks north into DuPont Circle, and you got your teal suit, man, and you're looking good.
I wish I would have gotten the memo.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, nobody said anything. I mean, even at the interview, like nobody said anything. Like you're supposed to just know it. Like it's just supposed to be something that you know. And then my boss took me at lunchtime. We went down to Ann Taylor, and she picked out like a week's worth of clothing. And I was like, "How much is that?" Really expensive, but I had the black suit with the black, just, you can wear like a white shirt or a different colored shirt, but you got to have the blazer with I think it's a little bit better now. But anyway, I just loved how you, referenced that in the book. And I was like, yes, I know.
It makes, so Washington, D.C. is, I think, just really misunderstood. There's like we were talking about the federal center, but then there's also the city where real people live, people like you and me. And, which is very international in some ways. You have people from all over the country, all over the world. It's a place of a big medical profession, big educational center. It's very artsy. It's a ton of obviously journalists and media, and it's a really fun place to live. And I think that a lot of times when we get into these political thrillers that you see, it's all about like what the president's doing or what these senators are doing. But really, they miss out on what the real people who live in the district.
Right. Oh, I absolutely loved it. I really did. My last day there, I cried. I was like, no, I don't want to leave, please. And I went from California to there, so you would have thought that I'd like hate the weather or, but I grew up in Pennsylvania, so the weather didn't bother me too much, but I just love being a part of and reading the Washington Post every morning. Like, that was like so much fun. But anyway, so this starts out, this is so much fun. I've never read a book like this where that's talked about like a newsroom the way you did. And I learned so much. And of course, like that's your background. And I couldn't wait to ask you, I mean, the difference between when you worked there and like now, because of news, like how much has that changed what we watch? And, because news is like Yahoo News, it's almost instantaneous, but then there's still like 60 Minutes and still news programs on at night and everything. I mean, do you feel like you were at the like greatest part of news shows like that?
I mean, I was very lucky. So when people talk about the media, they always talk about it like being one thing, and I'm always like, there isn't even one thing within an organization. I mean, it's like an octopus. If it is one thing, it has so many different tentacles and so many different ways of expressing itself. Not just the forms, paper, radio, and broadcast, and internet, and all that kind of stuff, but also within each. Even shows or within newspapers, you have different, you have opinion, you have news, you have like this kind of mishmash hybrid of opinion news. So I was very lucky that I always worked news. I was like hard news. And, we did do some political news when I was at the Washington Bureau of NBC News down here in, obviously Washington. But, that's what I liked. I didn't do features. I didn't do political. Well, I did some political. I'm sorry. I didn't do opinions. That's what I meant to say. It was just all very much facts. Now, I haven't worked in news for a while. After I got the contract, I stopped, working
Right.
in news, just to write fiction. I would say that world has changed. Even the same newsrooms that I was in, just the world seems to be changing, and that world in particular, just by the pressures that are put on it. I think by the marketplace and also by what's happening politically. Not as a criticism, just
Right.
there's a lot more pressure on it now. So it's changing. And I don't think that people really know, if you're going to hoist a camera on your shoulder tomorrow, what you're really going to run into. Um, so it's really hard for me to say that the Cutaway, for example, is still completely accurate, except to say I think it could still happen. I wrote it as a very realistic kind of story, because I was just really interested in this woman, in this world, who became just obsessed with a thing that you're just not supposed to become obsessed, and it became a personal kind of journey, and I was just very interested in that, and I do still think that could happen.
Right. Well, the main character, Virginia, Ginny, I loved her. I mean, I so loved her. Like, I fell right in with her. Like, just the way she cared about this case and what she did to try to figure it out. And I've read a lot of mysteries like this, a lot of crime novels like this, but I loved her as a female in this world, having around these men, and dealing with their little intricacies. And just and trying and putting her heart into this. I love the way did you base her kind of off of like how you were, or somebody you knew, or was it just
I think what I've worked with a lot of very professional, very talented people, female correspondents, producers, and they're very driven,
mm-hmm.
and they're very smart. And a lot of them, that the focus is on their work. And so what happens necessarily is that you can't really deal with things like, say, love or how you look, how your hair looks, when you got to run down a dark alley. So I would say, she's not me, or maybe she's who I would have liked to have been when I grew up. A lot of the kind of techniques that she used, I've seen. A lot of them I've done. I think that when my agent first got the book, he said to me, here's the thing that I love about this character. She's the smartest person in the room, and she doesn't really know that. But you always have to remember in every scene that she's the smartest person in the room. And sometimes in the beginning, in the early draft, he said, sometimes you're pulling back. It's almost like you're afraid for a woman to be the smartest person in the room. Why is that? Figure it out. Fix the manuscript. So I had to go, so I had to go for my run. I mean, very nicely. He's a great guy.
Right.
So, I went for a run, and I figured out, why am I so afraid of this woman to stand up to these powerful people in some places? Why am I, and so I figured it out, and I fixed the manuscript.
Yeah, I just want to read for everyone. I was going to write it down, and then I'm like, no, I'm just going to read it because I got the book right here. This first paragraph, because I love a first line, but I love the whole. I was going to just do the first line, and then I'm like, no, I'm going to read the first paragraph, if you don't mind. Because to me this means everything about the book, and I always, like, when I finish this book, I always go back and I reread the first chapter. That's what I do with any kind of thriller or crime book, because I like to see like what I missed, or what I if there was something there, and then I like fell in love with this paragraph again. So I was like, that's how I knew it was really, really good. So, and I know you guys spent a lot of hard work on this, but this one is really good. It began with someone else's story. In the beginning, a woman went out to meet a man, and on her long walk, she disappeared. I didn't know the woman. I'd never met her, but I could see her clearly in my mind, walking the streets of Georgetown, her heels striking the sidewalk to the percussive music booming out of the city bars. That same path I'd traveled many times myself. And then, I thought it made her so vulnerable right there. Well, first of all, I do love the first sentence. It began with someone else's story. But then you kind of wrap it into, like, it's someone else's story, but it was her story. Like, she felt such a part of this story. and then we go from there. So I just wanted to be able to share that with everyone because it kind of wraps up the book, I thought, in a really nice paragraph. So did you write it like, was it your first paragraph, or is it something like you worked really hard to get down?
Now, I actually, when I first started this novel, I thought it was a short story, and I was just trying to learn how to write stories. And I couldn't figure out though what it was really about. What's it all really about? And I was thinking, how women have so many shared experiences, and we don't even really realize it because so many of the things that happen to us we don't talk about. And so I thought, oh, it'd be really interesting to have someone who's fascinated by something that happened to a stranger that dovetailed into their life. And I went and I took a nap, like I always do when I get really frustrated. I think it's probably like my 2 o'clock like doldrums. So I'm like, oh, it's all terrible. Everything's a wreck. I want to throw everything away. So instead of throwing things away, everyone, don't throw them away. Just go take a nap.
Right.
And I remember coming up out of the nap thinking it begins with someone else's story. And I was like, oh, that's kind of not a bad first line. Okay, it began with someone else's story. Oh, okay. And I wrote it down.
I love that. As soon as I read it, I was like, ooh, what a great way to start this story. Like, I thought it was amazing. And in there, you kind of go into what a cutaway is. But I want you to kind of explain that to everybody because I don't think it's general. Because when I read it, I was like, oh, I was kind of, I knew that it had to do with the news, like the editing, but I didn't exactly know what it was.
So cutaway is a very technical photographic term, actually, and it's used in news a lot. When we're doing a story, you'll have a head-on camera that shoots, like, say, for example, the daily press briefing at the White House. So you have a head-on camera that shoots, say, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and that's just shooting her right now, like this is shooting me, and it's taking in everything that she says. And then there's a cutaway shot, and that's a camera shooting the response of, reporters going, me, next, or, oh my God, or, ah, ha, ha, or, whatever. It's a secondary camera, and it's supposed to be the camera to get a reaction, and it's supposed to be not what the story is about. And so the cutaway, this young woman that goes missing, she's caught in a cutaway. And everything that you see in her reaction is what the story ends up being about. So it's sort of a play on just the technical terms of photography, which, hopefully it's really nice when people learn. It's also, I love the word, how she was cut away from. So I love, just the whole nuance.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that because she couldn't tell. Because they can't weigh the camera. She didn't know what was edited and what wasn't edited. And so
Right.
I love that it all kind of, I don't know. I love the title because I thought it was a really cool way to sum the whole story up,
Right.
And I don't know how much
Right.
you have, to say about that, but about the
Right.
title,
I'm sorry.
No, I said, I don't know how much say. Sometimes I say to somebody like, yeah, I know, I love the title. And they're like, I didn't come up with it. I didn't, the publisher came up with it, but I love this title.
My publisher, Dawn Davis, did very little edit. She was so, and everything she did, she was such a joy to work with. Everything she did was so respectful, and here I am, I'm this, first time novelist, and I would shake every time I got a text from her or an email from her. I'm like, oh my God, she's calling, which is so ridiculous. But she was so. In fact, when she bought the book, my agent got a 2-book deal, and she said, look, the first book, I think it's pretty close to go. And then we worked on things for about 6 months, but she liked the title. She liked the main character. The language was pretty much in good shape. So, wow. But I had a lot more time to work on the first book than I have on the second. So,
it always kind of works like that. And I didn't realize until, so here's the paperback, which I just love because you can't tell from on the picture, but I mean, it just shines like the name, the cutaway, like it sparkles that everybody can see. But I see the hardback behind you because I looked on Amazon and I saw that it was a different cover, and I love that cover too. I mean, I love both of them for different
Yeah.
reasons, but I saw people on Amazon were like, "Oh my gosh, the hardcover, is such, a different type, a different, thing." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it really is a lot different." But did you make that decision, or did they just decide to do it a different way?
They have really good cover artists,
Hmm.
and they would come up with a couple different choices, three different choices, and say which did you like the best. And universally, we all liked that one, and also the
Because
hardcover.
that's
And then the one from the UK is totally different.
oh
I mean, it's
really?
really interesting how different people, well, I mean, of course, they're all different, but like here, wait, let's see. So the UK is that, which is completely different.
Oh
So it's really interesting, the thoughts, what all the artists' different conceptions of story. It's,
yeah,
it's such a neat thing to kind of work with them about.
right. And I don't know if you've seen like on Instagram what I see people doing is like they make pictures with their books with this part, and they'll put like all their red books. Like I used to organize them in like title or alphabetical order or something, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, because it's got the red, but then it's got the teal. Like you can do all kinds of things with this book.
I, you know, I look at people who do things like that. I think, I wish I was like that. I mean, I wish. I mean, look at my. I mean, I was just like, can I turn this around? How can I turn my office is a mess. You know what I did? I literally pushed, piles of papers off my desk just to try and pretend like my life isn't. I don't know. I just feel like it's a daily triage situation, man.
I know. I'm always so impressed by them because they'll be like all their pink book. I'm like, when do they have time to do that? My bookcase looks like yours. Okay, I just shove them in as I get them, and then I look. Now I'm looking at the colors, and I'm like, ooh, I could do it. Like, if I really ever have time
Right,
to organize my books, I can like be all color coordinated.
right, right. I'm
Okay.
just glad when I brush my hair.
I know. Okay, so your next book, do you have a title?
I do. I'm not supposed to really talk
Okay.
about any of it yet, but I'll tell you, it's very different. It's still set in DC. Well, I shouldn't say it's very different. It's set in DC, the same world of
Hmm.
police, prosecutors, media, lawyers. Um, it's a lot less on the politics. I think just because of what's been going on this past year, everything's been so topsy turvy. I really wanted to stay away from that, just because it's not clear in my head. And I'm really, really excited about it. So,
Well, I really love reading like about the newsroom because like I said when I was reading it I was like you don't really think about like what happens or like how they pick different stories or how they don't pick different stories and it was very interesting to read like from that perspective and that's what I liked being inside that world and of course like you write that so well because you spent so many years inside that world um, you know
well, I think also what happened is, I think, and I don't mean this as this isn't a criticism at all. I mean, how could anyone? But I think people have a misunderstanding of media also in a lot of ways, particularly TV. I remember my best friend is a producer still, and I remember calling her about 8 years ago, I guess it was. I was reading something about the MSM. I'm like, who are these horrible people? The MSM, my God. She just so laughed. She's like, that's you. I'm like, I don't do that. It's it's really funny. And I bet you police officers run into this, lawyers, doctors, teachers,
right.
everyone who has an idea of what a thing is, until they actually do it. That's just human nature. And so it was really fun for me to teach people simple things like look, the journalists only report what they're told. If they're lied to, they report a lie. It's not They're not fortune tellers. They're not all-knowing and all-seeing. They merely report what people tell them. And so that's really important to know, so that when you read the stories, you're looking at who the sources are. That it's not necessarily the reporter, it's who's talking to the reporter. So you can get nuance that way and learn a little bit more about what a particular story if you're interested.
Yeah, and I even find especially right now, it's like I try to watch good news. I try
Yeah.
to look for the good stuff, because there's so much other stuff out there right now. It's so hard, and you try to look for those really good stories, and but they have to report it. It's like you can't get mad at the messenger. Like that's what's happening. But
Yeah.
and that's what I loved about her too, is like she was just so out for the truth. That's all she wanted, was to know the truth. And I love the ending, and I don't do spoilers at all, but I mean, I really, really love the ending. And it was a little shocking, I have to say. I was a little like, oh, okay. Because I thought it was all going one way, and it didn't. But that's the fun of it, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, I never get mad about that. I always think it's such a good thing. Because if I think I know and then it turns out, sometimes you can't really make people happy, because some people are like, but I thought I knew, and then it shocked me. But I kind of like to be shocked.
Well, I didn't know either, really. I was just writing, and I thought there were two paths,
Right.
and I just couldn't. I kept trying to write her down one path, and she kept going the other. It's just, I think that when you get to know a character over the course, especially when you're writing in the first person, your first book,
Right.
you really get to know this character.
Right.
So much that it almost feels like your child. I mean, I remember when I handed in this book for the last time, I felt like I was putting my kid on the bus for the first time. I just put my head down and cried. Like, oh, and now I'm just like, okay, now Virginia, you gotta go. I'm working on something else here. Stop bothering me. But that first time and that first character, you get to know them so well, and you just know what they can and cannot do. They might want to do something, but they can't get there. And you just have to be true to that, I think.
You know what? And that's how I kind of felt with her, because that's what I'm telling you. I got really attached to her, and then when I thought she was going down this one path, I was like, good, that's nice and safe, and you'll be happy. And I just want her to be happy. and then when she didn't, I was like, of course you didn't, honey. Like, of course you didn't. Like, I felt the same way. I felt very motherly towards her, because I was like,
me too.
Yeah, I was talking to this one older woman. She's an author, and she's a historian author, but she's like 75 or something. But she wrote a book about Cleopatra, and she said when she finished it, this was 900 pages on Cleopatra. She said when she wrote the last sentence, she stayed in her bedroom for 3 days. She said she couldn't tell anybody that she had written the last sentence of this book, because she felt like that connected to Cleopatra, and she didn't want to talk about it. She was like, I didn't want to see anybody. She's like, I didn't answer the phone. I just stayed in my room. I ate, and that's it. And I was like, oh, I can see, because I read the 900-page book, and I was like, I would have done that too. I don't think I could have ended it. Like, she's like, I had to break up with her. I had to, end it in my own way, and then come out and tell people in my own way that I ended it. So, I do understand that. It's true.
Yeah, I mean, I totally feel that. I remember the first couple of reviews that I read. I remember the first really rough review I read. I remember thinking, gosh, you're so mean to my kid. and then you're like, and then number one, you learn to not really read reviews anyway too much, because you can get really sort of, if they're good, you get like sidetracked, and that's not true. I mean, look, your book is never as good or as bad as anyone says.
Right. But you know what? I read so many good reviews on this book. I mean, all over the place. And I don't read reviews before. I read practically nothing before I read the book. I want to know nothing. I kind of like to read the back. I want to know nothing, so I can go into the story. And when I'm done, I go back and to see if I agree. And I was like, wow, this got great. You must be so thrilled. Like I said, debut novel, great reviews. I mean, you couldn't have done better. Okay.
Love you.
That's my own personal opinion. But everybody, here it is. Look at the Cutaway. And if you are lucky enough to win this on Instagram this week, you will, because I have 3 of them. So I am so excited. Thank you so much, Christina. It was so much fun to talk to you about this. And I am so blessed to have been able to read it. I'm really happy I found you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
I will have all of Christina's links under here so you can find her everywhere, and the Amazon link so you can go buy it. But I can't wait for your next book. Please keep in touch because I would love to read it first, but, second if I have to. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye.
Bye. So guys, you saw me battling the sun that entire time, but look at the lighting now. It's like perfect. Anyway, that's what happens when you don't have I'm trying to get professional lighting. I'm trying to get the lighting better, and sometimes this natural light is perfect, and then other times the sun is in my eyes, like when it's setting. But anyway, you got to see her, and she looked beautiful, and that's all that matters. Here it is, The Cutaway. Thank you for watching. She is amazing. This is such a good book. Go buy it. All her links will be listed under here. Thank you, Christina, and thank you, everyone.